If you hide here, you do not leave alive. The voice came from the darkness before she even realized she was not alone. Ava Brooks froze, her breath caught somewhere between a scream and a prayer. The coffin lid slammed shut above her, sealing out the storm, the shouting, the footsteps chasing her through the graveyard. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then she heard it. A second heartbeat. Slow. Heavy. Not hers. Her fingers trembled against the velvet lining beneath her palms. This was wrong. Coffins were supposed to be empty. Cold. Dead. But this one felt occupied. The air was not stale. It was still. Waiting. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she pressed herself into the corner, tried to make her body smaller, quieter, invisible. Outside, the distant echo of boots on wet gravel faded. She should have felt relief. Instead, dread crept in, thick and suffocating. Something shifted in the darkness beside her. Not imagined. Not a trick of fear. Real. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you cannot miss. Ava had not planned to run into a graveyard tonight. She had not planned anything past surviving the next 5 minutes. The rain had soaked through her thin jacket miles ago, clinging to her skin like ice. Her lungs burned from sprinting down uneven streets, past flickering streetlights, past strangers who looked away when she begged for help. They had followed her anyway. They always did. Her ex-boyfriend and the men he called friends, their laughter sharp and cruel behind her as they closed the distance. She had cut through the cemetery because it was the only place left to go. No lights, no witnesses, no escape, until she saw it. A coffin half buried, its lid slightly open like an invitation she did not question. She dove inside without thinking, pulling the heavy wood down over her, sealing herself in darkness. It was supposed to be a hiding place, a temporary refuge, a way to disappear. But now, pressed into the suffocating dark, Ava realized something far worse than being found by the men chasing her. She was not alone. A breath touched the back of her neck. Cold, controlled, ancient. Her entire body went rigid. Slowly, impossibly slowly, a hand closed around her wrist. The grip was not rough. It was worse, precise, unbreakable. A voice, deeper than anything she had ever heard, spoke right beside her ear. You chose the wrong place to hide. And in that moment, Ava understood. She had not escaped the danger. She had stepped directly into something far older, far more powerful, and far less forgiving. The darkness did not stay silent after he spoke. It deepened. Ava could feel it, like the air itself had weight now, pressing against her lungs, slowing every breath. Her fingers instinctively tried to pull away, but his grip tightened just enough to remind her that escape was no longer an option. Not here, not with him. Her voice came out small, barely more than a whisper. Please. I did not know. The words felt useless the moment they left her mouth. Of course she did not know. That was the point. No one would willingly step into a coffin that already belonged to something alive. Something ancient. A low sound escaped him, not quite a laugh, not quite a growl. No, he said quietly, his voice smooth and cold as winter glass. You did not. His hand released her wrist without warning. Ava jerked back, pressing herself against the inner wall, her heart racing so fast it blurred into noise. For 1 second, she thought he had let her go, that she might still crawl out, push open the lid, run back into the storm. Then something shifted above them. The coffin lid did not open. It moved, not upward, not outward. It slid, as if responding to something unseen. A faint line of dim gray light appeared, cutting through the darkness like a blade. Ava froze, staring at it. The opening widened just enough for her to see outside. Not the graveyard she had stumbled through. Not the crooked headstones or the iron fence. Stone walls. Smooth. Black. Too perfect. The coffin was not buried. It was placed. Inside something. Where am I? She whispered. The answer came from behind her, closer than before. Home. The words settled over her like a sentence. Ava turned, slowly, her eyes adjusting to the faint light. And then she saw him. He was sitting upright now, impossibly still, as if he had always been there and she had simply failed to notice. Tall, lean, dressed in black that seemed to absorb what little light touched it. His face was sharp, too perfect in a way that made her instinct scream danger. But it was his eyes that held her. Deep red, not bright, not glowing wildly. Controlled, ancient, watching her like she was something fragile and dangerous at the same time. Ava could not look away. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. She shifted backward again, her shoulder hitting the edge of the coffin. There was nowhere else to go. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "You are afraid," he said, not as a question. Ava swallowed hard, her throat dry. "You should be." The air dropped in temperature. She could feel it in her bones now, a cold that was not from the rain or the night. Something older, something that did not belong to the living world. Outside, footsteps approached. Heavy, organized, not the chaotic pursuit she had fled from. These were precise, controlled. A voice echoed faintly through the stone chamber beyond the coffin. "My lord." Ava flinched at the words. "My lord." The meaning hit her before she could stop it. The realization crashed through her chest, knocking the breath from her lungs. She turned back to him slowly, her eyes widening as the truth settled in. Not just a man, not just something inhuman, something far worse, something above everything else in this place. His gaze did not shift as he answered the voice outside. "Wait." One word. That was all it took. The footsteps stopped instantly. Silence followed, heavy and obedient. Ava felt it then. The power in that single command. The kind of power that did not need to shout, did not need to threaten. It simply existed and everything else bent around it. Her hands trembled in her lap. "You are the one they were talking about," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. His head tilted slightly, studying her like she had just become more interesting. And what were they saying? Ava hesitated. Every instinct told her to stay quiet. But silence felt more dangerous than truth. "That no one crosses you," she said softly. "And lives?" For a moment, nothing moved. No bodies, no sound. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not amusement. Something quieter, more dangerous. Interest. "Then you understand your situation," he said. Ava shook her head, her pulse hammering. "No," she admitted. "I really do. Not." Another pause. Then he moved. It was not fast. That was what made it worse. He leaned closer, closing the small distance between them until she could feel the cold radiating from him, until his voice brushed against her skin. "You ran from monsters," he murmured, "and chose to hide with one." His gaze dropped briefly to her hand, still trembling against the velvet lining. A single thin cut stretched across her palm from when she had climbed into the coffin. A bead of blood welled at the surface. His eyes darkened. The air shifted again. Not colder. Tighter. Focused. Ava felt it immediately. The change in him. The attention narrowing, sharpening, locking onto that single detail. Her breath hitched. "Do not move," he said softly. This time, it was not a command to others. It was for her. And something in his tone made it impossible to disobey. Outside, the voice returned, more urgent now. "My lord, the hunters are approaching the outer gate." Hunters. The word snapped something in Ava's mind. Her past. Her pursuers. The men she had fled. But the fear she felt now was different. Deeper. Because she no longer knew which side she should be afraid of. The man in front of her did not look away from the blood on her hand. "Let them come," he said quietly. Then his eyes lifted to hers again. And for the first time, Ava saw something that made her heart stutter. Not hunger. Not cruelty. Recognition. "You," he said, almost to himself. "This is not coincidence." And just like that, Ava understood something else. She had not simply made the wrong choice. She had made a choice that would change everything. The word coincidence did not fade. It lingered between them, heavy and unresolved, as if the air itself refused to let it go. Ava felt it settle deep in her chest, twisting into something colder than fear, something closer to inevitability. She shook her head instinctively, as if denying it could make it untrue. "I do not understand," she said, her voice unsteady but honest. I just ran. That is all. I did not choose anything. His gaze did not soften. If anything, it sharpened, focusing on her with a precision that made her feel exposed in ways she could not explain. That is where you are wrong, he replied. Every choice leads somewhere. You simply did not know where yours would end. Outside the coffin, the tension shifted. Ava could hear it now more clearly. The low hum of movement. Boots against stone. The faint metallic sound of weapons being readied. Whoever these hunters were, they were close. Too close. Her breath quickened as instinct clawed its way back to the surface. She had to get out. Had to leave before whatever was coming reached her. She moved without thinking, her hand reaching toward the narrow opening where dim light still filtered through. She barely made it an inch before his voice stopped her. Do not. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Her body obeyed before her mind could argue. She froze, her hand suspended in the air. He watched her for a moment, then continued, his tone quieter now, but no less absolute. If you leave this coffin, you will step into a war you cannot survive. Var. The word hit harder than anything else he had said. Ava lowered her hand slowly, her heart pounding. And if I stay? She asked. The question felt dangerous the moment she spoke it. He did not answer immediately. Instead, his gaze flicked once more to the thin line of blood on her palm. That small cut, insignificant just moments ago, now seemed to hold his entire attention. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. Not softer, more focused. Then you remain under my protection. Protection. The word should have felt safe. It did not. Not when it came from something like him. Ava let out a shaky breath. Protection from who? She asked. A faint sound escaped him. Something close to amusement, though it carried no warmth. From everyone, he said. The coffin shifted again. This time, the lid slid further open, revealing more of the chamber beyond. Ava hesitated, then slowly turned her head to look. What she saw made her breath catch. The space outside was vast. Stone walls rose high above, lined with dark pillars that seemed to stretch into shadow. Torches burned with steady, unnatural flames, casting a cold glow that did not flicker like normal fire. Figures stood at the edge of the room, tall and still, their presence controlled and watchful. All of them faced the coffin. All of them waited. For him. Ava pulled back slightly, instinctively retreating toward the only solid thing she could trust, which was the edge of the coffin behind her. They are waiting for you, she whispered. They are waiting for your decision, he corrected. The distinction sent a chill down her spine. Another voice echoed through the chamber, sharper this time, edged with urgency. My lord, the outer gate has been breached. Ava felt her pulse spike. Breached. The hunters were already inside. She looked back at him, panic rising again, raw and immediate. They are coming, she said. You said it yourself. This is a war. I should not be here. His eyes met hers again, steady and unshaken. No, he said quietly. You should not. The words hung between them, but something in his expression told her that did not change anything. He reached forward then, his movement deliberate, controlled. For a brief second, Ava tensed, expecting pain, expecting something violent. Instead, his fingers closed gently around her injured hand. The contact was cold, but not cruel, not forceful, just firm enough to hold her still. Her breath caught as he turned her palm upward, studying the small cut as if it were something far more significant than it should be. The moment his skin touched hers, the air changed again. Not colder, brighter. A faint glow flickered beneath her skin, barely visible, like light struggling to surface from deep within her veins. Ava gasped, her body jerking in shock. What is that? She whispered. His grip tightened slightly, not enough to hurt, but enough to keep her from pulling away. His eyes darkened, the red deepening into something almost black. That, he said slowly, is why you are still alive. Outside, the chamber erupted into motion. The guards moved instantly, their stillness breaking into precise, coordinated action. Weapons drawn, positions taken. The war had reached them. But inside the coffin, time seemed to slow, narrowing down to a single point. Him. Her. And the faint light now glowing beneath her skin. Ava stared at her hand, then back at him, fear and confusion twisting together in her chest. "I did not do anything," she said, her voice shaking. "I swear I did not." His gaze lifted from her hand to her face, searching, measuring. "That is exactly what concerns me," he replied. And for the first time, Ava realized something even more terrifying than everything else she had seen. He was not afraid of the hunters. He was not afraid of the war. He was afraid of what she might be. The moment the light beneath her skin appeared, everything outside the coffin changed. The chamber did not erupt into chaos. It sharpened. Every movement became faster, more precise, as if an invisible command had just been given without a single word spoken. Ava felt it in the air, in the way the guards shifted their stance, in the way the silence between footsteps grew heavier instead of louder. This was not panic. This was preparation. Her breath came faster now, uneven, her eyes locked on the faint glow still flickering beneath her skin. It pulsed once, then again, before dimming slightly, as if it had never been there at all. But she knew it had been. She had felt it. "You saw that," she said, her voice trembling. "Tell me you saw that." His hand was still around hers, colder now, but unmoving. He did not look at her immediately. His gaze remained fixed on her palm, as if searching for something that had already disappeared. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost whatever step, his boots scraping against the stone. His eyes swept across the chamber, then narrowed as they landed on the coffin. On her. For a split second, their gazes locked. Recognition flickered across his face. Not of who she was, but of what she represented. A weakness. A target. "There," he snapped. Everything happened at once. Ava barely had time to inhale before the air shifted violently. The figure beside her moved. Not fast. Not in the way she expected. There was no blur. No flash. One moment he was still, the next he was simply somewhere else, standing between her and the approaching threat. The distance he covered should not have been possible, but it happened as if space itself had bent to allow it. The chamber froze. Not out of fear. Out of instinct. Even the hunters hesitated, their confidence faltering for the first time. The man who had spoken first stopped mid-step, his grip tightening on his weapon. His eyes lifted slowly, meeting the one standing before him. Ava could not see his face from where she was, but she did not need to. She felt it. The shift in the room. The pressure. The quiet, overwhelming force of something far beyond human. "You should not have come here," his voice carried across the chamber, calm and absolute. No raised tone. No threat. Just certainty. The hunter swallowed, but did not step back. "Not yet. We are not here for you," he said, though his voice betrayed him, a slight tremor breaking through. "We are here for the girl." Ava breath caught. The words hit harder than anything else so far. For the girl. For her. She had run from danger only to become the reason it followed. Silence fell again. Heavy. Expectant. Then he spoke, quieter this time, but somehow more dangerous. "And yet," he said, "you came into my home." The last word echoed, not loud but final. Ava watched as the hunter face shifted, uncertainty creeping in, cracking the surface of his resolve. He understood now. Not fully, but enough. Enough to realize that this was not a place he controlled. Not a situation he could win. Ava's grip tightened against the edge of the coffin, her nails digging into the fabric as her breathing quickened. She did not know which outcome she feared more. Being taken by the men who had chased her, or being kept by the one who stood between them now. Because one thing had become painfully clear. She was no longer running. She was the center of something far bigger than herself, and there was no escaping it anymore. The silence after his words did not break. It deepened, pressing against every surface of the chamber like an unseen force. Ava felt it in her chest, in the way her breath refused to come easily, in the way even the hunters seemed to hesitate, caught between instinct and fear. The man who had stepped forward glanced briefly at the others behind him, a flicker of doubt crossing his face before he forced it away. "We are not here to challenge you," he said, his voice steadier now, though the tension beneath it remained. We are here for what does not belong to you. Ava felt those words like a strike. What does not belong to you? She did not know whether to feel insulted or terrified. Before she could even process it, the figure in front of her moved again. This time she saw it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough to understand that it was not something human. The air distorted around him, like heat bending light, and then he was closer to the hunters, standing just a few feet away from the man who had spoken. No footsteps, no sound, just presence. The hunter stiffened, his weapon lifting instinctively, though his hands trembled despite his effort to control them. You misunderstand, the man said quietly, his voice carrying through the chamber with an ease that did not match its softness. Everything that enters this place belongs to me. The statement was not loud. It did not need to be. It settled over the room with absolute certainty, leaving no space for argument. Ava felt something shift inside her again. Not just fear, something heavier. The realization that she had crossed a line she could not step back over. The hunters exchanged quick glances, their formation tightening as if drawing strength from each other. One of them took a cautious step forward. Then you're choosing to protect her, he said. You know what she is. Ava breath caught. Her eyes snapped back to the man standing between her and them. What she is. The words echoed in her mind, louder than anything else. She did not know. She had never known. And yet the way they said it made it sound like something undeniable, like something dangerous. He did not answer immediately. For a moment, he simply stood there, his back to her, his presence filling the space between her and the hunters. Then, slowly, he turned his head just enough for his voice to carry back to her. Do you? The question was not directed at the hunters. It was for her. Ava froze, her thoughts scattering. She started, but nothing followed. Because there was nothing she could say. No explanation. No understanding. Just confusion and fear tangled together. He turned back to the hunters. No, he said, his tone final. She does not. The chamber held its breath. The man in front of the hunters lowered his weapon slightly, though he did not relax. Then you are making a mistake, he warned. If you keep her, you bring something into your domain that you cannot control. Ava felt her pulse spike again, each word driving deeper into her chest. Something you cannot control. She wanted to scream that they were wrong, that she was nothing, just a girl who ran too far, who made one terrible choice. But the memory of the light beneath her skin stopped her. The look in his eyes when he saw it. That was not nothing. That was something she did not understand. And that terrified her more than anything else. A faint smile touched his lips then, but there was no warmth in it. Control is not the concern, he said quietly. Ownership is. The word hit harder than any threat. Ava felt it like a chain locking into place around her. Ownership. The hunters reacted instantly, tension snapping tight again. She is not yours, one of them said sharply. Not yet, he replied. The correction was calm, certain, and far more dangerous. Ava's grip tightened against the coffin edge, her nails pressing into the fabric as her mind struggled to keep up. Not yet. What did that mean? What was she becoming? Outside, more movement echoed through the halls, distant but growing closer. Reinforcements. For one side or the other, she could not tell. The hunter leader seemed to hear it too. His jaw tightened, his gaze flicking briefly toward the entrance before returning to the man before him. This is your last chance, he said. Step aside. We take the girl. This ends without bloodshed. The offer hung in the air, fragile and false. Ava knew it. She could feel it. Even if he accepted, nothing about this would end cleanly. Nothing about this could be simple anymore. The man in front of her did not move, did not hesitate. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before, almost quiet, but it carried through the chamber with absolute clarity. Leave, he said, just one word. But this time it was not a suggestion. It was a command. The air itself seemed to respond, pressing outward, forcing the hunters to take an involuntary step back. Ava saw it in their faces then. Not anger, not defiance. Fear, real fear. And in that moment, she understood something else. Whatever she had stepped into, whatever she had awakened, it had just shifted the balance of power in a way none of them could ignore. And there was no going back. The command did not echo. It did not need to. The moment the word left his lips, the chamber itself seemed to respond, as if the stone walls recognized authority older than their foundation. Ava felt it ripple through the air, a pressure that forced her chest to tighten, her breath to hitch. The hunters felt it too. She saw it in the way their shoulders stiffened, in the way their formation faltered for just a fraction of a second. That was all it took. One of the figures along the chamber wall moved. Then another. The guards who had stood silent until now stepped forward in perfect unison, their movements controlled, precise, almost mechanical. They did not rush. They did not shout. They simply closed the distance. The hunters reacted instantly, weapons rising, tension snapping back into place. But it was already too late. Ava could feel it. The shift. The balance had tipped. Fall back. One of the hunters muttered, low and urgent. But the leader did not move. His gaze remained locked on the man in front of him, stubborn, defiant. Even his doubt crept into his expression. "You are making this worse," he said, his voice tightening. "You think this ends here?" "It does not." No answer came. The silence that followed was not empty. It was deliberate. The kind of silence that meant the decision had already been made. Then everything broke. It did not begin with a scream or a clash. It began with movement. Fast, controlled, unavoidable. Ava barely saw it happen. One moment the space between the guards and the hunters existed. The next it was gone. The first impact came like a shock wave, the sound of force meeting resistance echoing through the chamber. Ava flinched, her hands instinctively covering her ears as the tension exploded into action. But even in the chaos, there was a difference. The guards moved like shadows, silent and exact, each motion calculated. The hunters were fast, but they were human. Their movements carried effort, strain, hesitation. It was not a fair fight. Ava pressed herself back against the coffin, her breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. It was too fast, too precise, too controlled. She could not follow it, only feel it, the air shifting with every movement, every strike, every step. And through it all, he did not move. He stood where he was, between her and the chaos, his presence steady, unshaken, as if the outcome had never been in question. Ava's eyes flicked to him, her fear twisting into something else. Not safety, never that, but certainty. He knew how this would end. Outside the immediate clash, the hunter leader held his ground for a moment longer, his gaze darting across the chamber as he watched his team being forced back. The realization came slowly, then all at once. They were losing. His jaw tightened, his grip on his weapon shifting as he made a decision. "We are not done," he said, his voice sharp, cutting through the noise. Then he stepped back, not in defeat, in retreat. The others followed, pulling away from the guards with practiced urgency, their movements no longer aggressive but defensive. Within seconds, they had begun to withdraw, their formation tightening as they moved toward the entrance. The guards did not pursue far. They did not need to. The message had already been delivered. This was not their territory, and it never would be. The chamber fell quiet again, but it was not the same silence as before. This one carried the weight of what had just happened. Ava slowly lowered her hands, her ears still ringing, her heart racing as she tried to steady her breathing. The hunters were gone, not defeated, but forced out. Because of him. She turned her head slightly, her gaze finding him again. He had not moved, not once, as if the entire conflict had been beneath his notice, as if it had never truly been a threat. The thought sent a new kind of fear through her. What kind of power did that require? What kind of being did that make him? He finally shifted then, turning his head just enough to look at her. His expression had not changed. Still calm, still controlled. But there was something else there now. Something quieter, focused. "It has begun," he said. Ava blinked, confusion cutting through her fear. "What has?" she asked, her voice unsteady. His gaze held hers, unblinking. "The moment you stepped into that coffin," he replied, "you did not just choose a place to hide. He paused, the silence stretching just long enough to settle into her bones. You chose a side. The words landed harder than anything else. Ava felt them sink deep, anchoring her in a reality she had not agreed to. A side, a war, a fate she did not understand. Her hands trembled as she looked down at her palm again, at the faint trace where the light had appeared. It was gone now, but the memory of it was not. She looked back at him, her voice barely holding together. I did not choose anything, she whispered. His gaze did not soften. You did, he said quietly. You just do not understand it yet. And in that moment, Ava realized something that made her chest tighten with something deeper than fear. This was not over. It was only beginning. The silence after his final words did not bring relief. It settled like a weight, pressing against Ava's chest, making it harder to breathe with each passing second. You chose a side. The sentence repeated in her mind, louder now, sharper, as if it refused to be ignored. She shook her head slightly, more to herself than to him, her fingers tightening around the edge of the coffin. No, she whispered under her breath. I was running. That is all. But even as she said it, the truth felt weaker than the reality around her. This place, these people, him, none of it was random. None of it felt accidental anymore. The guards had returned to their positions, silent once again, as if the conflict had never happened. But Ava could still feel the aftermath in the air, the tension that had not fully disappeared. It lingered waiting, watching. Then one of them stepped forward, taller than the others, his movements just as controlled but carrying a different weight. Authority. His eyes flicked briefly to Ava before returning to the man standing in front of her. My lord, he said, his voice low but steady. The outer perimeter is secured. The hunters have withdrawn beyond the eastern ridge. Ava did not know where that was, but the way he said it made it sound far enough. For now, the man in front of her did not turn. They will return, he said calmly. It was not a guess. It was a certainty. The guard inclined his head slightly. Yes, my lord. A pause followed, brief but deliberate. Then the guard spoke again, this time with a hint of something else beneath the control. Concern. There is another matter. Ava felt it immediately. The shift in attention. Subtle, but undeniable. The man in front of her finally turned. Not fully, just enough to acknowledge the speaker. Speak. The guard hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then his gaze flicked toward Ava again. Not openly, not disrespectfully, but enough to make it clear who he was referring to. The council will hear of this, he said. They will not accept her presence. The word presence carried weight. Not as a description, as a problem. Ava's chest tightened. She did not know who this council was, but she could already tell she would not want to meet them. The man in front of her did not react immediately. His expression remained unchanged, his posture steady, as if the concern meant nothing. The council does not decide what enters my domain, he said quietly. The guard lowered his head slightly, but he did not retreat. No, my lord, he agreed. But they will come. And when they do, they will not ask. Ava felt a chill run through her. Not from the cold, from the implication. Whoever these council members were, they were powerful enough to challenge even him. The thought alone was enough to make her stomach tighten. He finally turned fully then, his gaze shifting from the guard to her. Ava stiffened instinctively, her breath catching as his attention settled on her. Again, it felt heavier now, more focused, as if the conversation had changed something. Leave us, he said without looking away from her. The command was immediate. The guards did not hesitate. Within seconds, the chamber cleared, their presence fading into the shadows beyond the pillars until only silence remained again. Ava swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how alone she was. Alone with him. The realization hit differently now. Before, there had been chaos, distraction, movement. Now, there was nothing to hide behind. Just him, watching her. She shifted slightly, her back pressing against the coffin, her fingers curling into the fabric beneath her. What did he mean? She asked, her voice quieter now, more cautious. About the council. He did not answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer. Not fast. Never fast. But each step felt deliberate, closing the distance until the space between them felt too small, too confined. Ava's heart pounded, her instinct screaming again, but her body did not move. Could not move. It means, he said slowly, that your presence here is no longer secret. The words settled heavily. Ava felt her stomach drop. I did not ask to be here, she said quickly, the fear breaking through her restraint. I did not ask for any of this. His gaze did not waver. And yet you are here. The simplicity of it made it worse. Ava shook her head again, her voice rising slightly. Then let me leave, she said. If I am the problem, then I will go. I will leave and none of this has to happen. The moment the words left her mouth, she knew they were wrong. Not because they were untrue, but because they did not matter. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly he shook his head. You still do not understand, he said. Ava's breath caught. Understand what? She asked, her voice barely holding steady. He reached out again, his hand lifting toward her, but this time he did not touch her immediately. He paused, just inches away, as if measuring something unseen. You cannot leave, he said. Ava felt something inside her drop, cold and heavy. Why? She whispered. His eyes darkened slightly, the red deepening as his voice lowered. Because the moment they saw you, he said, you stopped being just a girl running from danger. He paused the silence, stretching just long enough to let the words settle. You became the reason it follows. Ava stared at him, her mind struggling to keep up, her chest tightening with a fear that felt larger than anything before. Not just hunted, not just trapped, important. And that was far worse, because important things did not get to walk away. And for the first time, she realized something that made her pulse spike again. The hunters were not the only ones coming back. The real danger had not even arrived yet. The words settled between them like a sentence already passed. The real danger had not even arrived yet. Ava felt it sink deep in her chest, heavier than fear, heavier than panic. Something inevitable, something she could not outrun. Her fingers trembled against the edge of the coffin as she tried to steady her breathing, but it would not slow. Not anymore. Then what am I supposed to do? She asked, her voice tight, barely controlled. Just stay here and wait for whatever comes next. His gaze did not soften. It did not need to. You do not have a choice, he said quietly. The answer came too fast, too certain. Ava shook her head again, more sharply this time. Everyone has a choice, she said, her voice rising despite herself. You said that yourself. Every choice leads somewhere. His expression changed then. Not much. Just enough to signal that something in her words had reached him. Yes, he said slowly. It does. Ava swallowed, pushing forward before she could lose the momentum. Then I'm choosing to leave, she said. The silence that followed was immediate, absolute. For a single second, nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Even the torches seemed to dim slightly, as if the chamber itself was waiting for his response. Ava felt it in her bones. The mistake she had just made. But she could not take it back now. She lifted her chin slightly, forcing herself to hold his gaze even as her heart threatened to break through her ribs. I'm not part of your world, she continued, her voice steadier now. I do not belong here. He studied her for a long moment, his eyes searching her face as if weighing something far deeper than her words. Then he moved, not toward her, past her. Ava flinched instinctively as he stepped out of the coffin, his presence shifting fully into the open space of the chamber. For the first time, she saw him clearly in the dim light. Tall, unnaturally still, every movement controlled down to the smallest detail. The shadows seemed to follow him, bending around his form instead of falling away. He stopped a few feet away, turning slightly so that she was no longer behind him, no longer shielded. The space between them felt different now, more exposed, more real. Then go, he said. The words hit harder than anything else. Ava blinked, caught off guard. What? She whispered. You want to leave, he said calmly. Then leave. Her heart stuttered, confusion crashing into her fear. It was too easy, too sudden. Nothing about this had been simple until now. You are not stopping me, she asked cautiously. His gaze held hers, unreadable. No. The answer came without hesitation. Ava hesitated only a second before moving. Slowly at first, then faster as instinct took over. She pushed herself out of the coffin, her feet hitting the cold stone floor. The contact grounded her, gave her something real to hold on to. She did not look back. She could not. If she did, she might not be able to move at all. The chamber stretched out in front of her, vast and unfamiliar, but there was an exit. She could see it now. The open doorway where the hunters had entered. Freedom, or something close enough to it. Her steps quickened, her breath coming faster as she crossed the distance. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get out before something changed, before he changed his mind. She was halfway there when it happened. The air shifted, not violently, not suddenly, subtly, enough for her to feel it, like stepping into something unseen. Ava slowed, her body reacting before her mind could catch up. The temperature dropped, colder than before, seeping into her bones. Her chest tightened, her breath catching as something invisible pressed against her, holding her back without touching her. She tried to take another step. She could not. Panic surged instantly. She pushed forward harder, her muscles straining, but it was like trying to move through water that would not part. No, she gasped, her voice breaking. No, no, no. Behind her, his voice came again. Calm, unchanged. I told you, he said quietly. Ava squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself to move, to break through whatever was holding her. You said I could go, she said, her voice rising in desperation. I am letting you try, he replied. The words cut deeper than anything else. Ava froze, her breath hitching as the truth settled in. This was not a door she could walk through. This was not a place she could simply leave. Her body trembled as she slowly turned back toward him, fear and realization colliding in her chest. He had not stopped her. He had shown her. The difference mattered, because it meant something far worse. It meant the choice she thought she had never existed at all. The realization did not fade. It tightened around Ava's chest like an invisible grip, squeezing the air from her lungs as she stood frozen between the doorway and the man behind her. The choice she thought she had never existed at all. Her legs trembled as the pressure around her body slowly eased, just enough for her to breathe again, but not enough to move forward. She lowered her gaze, staring at the stone floor beneath her feet, trying to understand what had just happened. What is this place? She whispered, her voice hollow now. What did I walk into? The answer did not come immediately. She could feel him watching her, measuring her reaction, weighing something she could not see. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before, but carried a different kind of weight. You walked into a threshold, he said. Ava frowned slightly, confusion cutting through her fear. That does not mean anything. It does, he replied. You simply do not understand it yet. Ava closed her eyes briefly, frustration rising now, pushing back against the fear. Then explain it, she said, her voice sharper than before. Stop talking like I am supposed to just accept this. Silence followed. Not empty, not dismissive, considered. Then she heard his footsteps. Slow, controlled, drawing closer. Ava tensed instinctively, but did not turn. She did not trust herself to face him again. Not when everything he said seemed to pull her deeper into something she could not escape. The coffin you entered, he began, his voice steady behind her, is not just a place of rest. Ava's breath caught slightly, her attention sharpening despite herself. It is bound to this domain, he continued, and everything that crosses, its threshold becomes part of it. Ava's eyes snapped open. The words hit differently now. Not abstract, not distant, direct. She turned slowly, her gaze locking onto him again. You are saying I am trapped, she said. He held her gaze without hesitation. I am saying you are bound. The correction felt worse. Bound implied something deeper, something intentional. Ava shook her head again, panic rising once more. I did not agree to that, she said. I did not choose that. His expression did not change. Agreement is irrelevant, he replied. The bond does not ask permission. Ava felt her pulse spike, anger beginning to push through the fear. That is not how anything works, she said, her voice rising. You cannot just decide that someone belongs here. I did not decide, he said quietly. Ava froze. The certainty in his tone cut through her argument before it could fully form. Then who did? She asked, her voice lower now, more cautious. His gaze flicked briefly to her hand again, to the faint mark where the light had appeared before returning to her face. That is what we are about to find out. The answer sent a chill down her spine. Not knowing was worse than any explanation he could have given, because it meant this was not finished. It was unfolding. Ava took a small step back without realizing it, her mind racing, trying to piece together something that made sense. The hunters, she said suddenly. They knew something. They said I do not belong to you. They came for me. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in thought. They came because they felt it, he said. Ava frowned. Felt what? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer again, closing the distance until she could feel the cold radiating from him once more. Not painful, just undeniable. Present. The bond, he said finally. Ava stared at him, her breath catching. That light, she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. That was not just something random. No, he replied. The single word settled heavily between them. Ava felt her stomach drop. Then what is it? She asked. This time, when he answered, there was no hesitation. A signal, he said. Ava blinked, confusion flashing across her face. To who? His gaze held hers, steady and unblinking. To everything that is looking for it. The implication hit immediately. Ava felt her chest tighten again, her breath growing shallow. You mean them, she said. The hunters. Not just them, he said. The correction came quietly, but it carried far more weight than anything else. Ava shook her head slowly, disbelief creeping in. How many? She whispered. He did not answer directly. He did not need to. Enough, he said. The single word was worse than any number. Ava felt her legs weaken slightly, her balance shifting as the reality settled in. She was not just trapped. She was marked, hunted, not by one group, not by one enemy, but by something far larger. Her gaze dropped again to her hand, to the place where the light had appeared. It looked normal now, ordinary, but it was not. Nothing about her was ordinary anymore. She looked back at him, fear and something else mixing in her expression now. Determination. Then why are you helping me? She asked. The question hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. His answer came without hesitation. I am not helping you, he said. Ava's heart stuttered. Then what are you doing? He stepped even closer, his presence overwhelming now, filling the space between them completely. His voice dropped slightly, quieter but far more intense. I am protecting what is mine. The words landed like a final verdict. Ava felt them settle deep, undeniable and heavy. Not comfort, not safety, something else entirely. Ownership. And for the first time, she realized something that made her breath catch. She was not just caught in a war. She was the reason it was coming. The word mine did not echo. It settled. Heavy. Final. Ava felt it in her chest, in the way her breath stalled, as if the air itself refused to move past that single statement. Not protection, not safety, ownership. Her fingers curled tightly against her palm, pressing into the place where the light had appeared before, as if she could erase whatever had marked her. I'm not yours, she said, her voice quieter now but firm. The words were not strong. They were fragile, but they were all she had. For a moment, he said nothing. He simply watched her, his gaze steady, unblinking, as if weighing something deeper than the words themselves. Then, slowly, he tilted his head, the movement subtle but deliberate. That, he said, is not for you to decide. The answer struck harder than anger ever could. Ava felt something inside her snap, frustration rising through the fear, pushing her to speak before she could stop herself. Then who decides? She demanded. You. His expression did not change. No. Ava stared at him, her breath uneven, her thoughts racing. Then who? She pressed again. This time, when he answered, there was something different in his voice. Not hesitation. Recognition. The one who bound you. The words landed like a shockwave. Ava froze, her mind struggling to process what he had just said. I told you, she said quickly, her voice tightening. I did not agree to anything. I did not make any deal. No, he said. You did not. Ava shook her head, confusion twisting with fear. Then what are you talking about? He stepped back slightly, creating just enough distance for her to breathe, but not enough to feel free. His gaze shifted briefly, not away from her, but through her, as if he were looking at something she could not see. This is older than you, he said. Older than your choices. Older than your understanding. Ava felt a chill run through her, colder than anything she had felt since entering the chamber. Stop speaking like that, she said, her voice shaking now. Just tell me what it is. Silence followed. Then he spoke again, slower this time, as if choosing each word with precision. There are bonds that are not made in the present, he said. They are carried, passed down, waiting. Ava blinked, her heart stuttering as the meaning began to form, piece by piece. You are saying this thing, she gestured vaguely to her hand, to the place where the light had appeared, was already inside me. His gaze returned fully to her. Yes. The confirmation hit harder than anything else. Ava felt her legs weaken slightly, her balance shifting as she tried to hold onto something real. That is not possible, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I am nobody. I have always been nobody. The moment the words left her mouth, something changed. Subtle, but undeniable. His expression sharpened, his eyes narrowing just slightly as he stepped forward again, closing the distance between them. No one who carries that mark is nobody, he said quietly. Ava's breath caught. The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. Not for him. Then what am I? She asked. This time, her voice was not defensive. It was searching, desperate for something that made sense. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached out once more, his hand lifting toward her palm. Ava tensed, but did not pull away this time. Not because she trusted him, because she needed to know. His fingers brushed lightly against her skin. The moment they made contact, the air shifted again. The faint glow returned. Stronger this time. Brighter. It spread across her palm in thin, intricate lines, forming a pattern she could not recognize but felt somehow familiar. Ava gasped, her body reacting instinctively as the light pulsed beneath her skin. What is that? She whispered, her eyes locked on the glowing pattern. His gaze darkened, not with fear, but with something deeper. Understanding. Acclaim, he said. Ava's heart stopped for a fraction of a second. By who? She asked. His eyes lifted from her hand to her face, his expression unreadable, but the weight behind it undeniable. That, he said slowly, is the question that will decide everything. The glow pulsed once more, then began to fade, retreating beneath her skin until it disappeared completely, leaving only the memory of its presence behind. Ava stood frozen, her breath uneven, her mind racing as the reality settled in. She was not just marked. She was claimed by something neither of them fully understood. She looked up at him again, her voice barely holding together. And if whoever did this comes for me, she asked. He did not hesitate. They will. The certainty in his voice sent a new wave of fear through her. Ava swallowed hard, forcing herself to ask the question she was not sure she wanted the answer to. And what will you do? His gaze held hers, steady and unyielding. What I always do, he said. Ava felt her pulse spike, anticipation tightening her chest. Which is, she asked. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming once again, his voice dropping lower, colder, absolute. I will not let them take what is mine. And for the first time, Ava realized something that made her breath catch completely. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about a claim that had already been made, and a king who refused to lose it. The word mine still echoed in her mind, even after the glow beneath her skin had faded. Ava stood frozen, her hands still slightly raised, as if the light might return at any moment and confirm everything she had just heard. A claim, not imagined, not accidental, something real, Something binding. Her breath came slowly now, uneven but controlled, as she tried to steady herself. Then I am not free, she said quietly, more to herself than to him. The statement felt heavy as it settled into place. Not fear, not panic, something colder. Acceptance beginning to form at the edges. He did not answer. He did not need to. The silence confirmed it. Ava lowered her hand slowly, her fingers brushing against her palm as if trying to feel the mark that was no longer visible. But it was still there. She could sense it now, not as light, as presence, a quiet pull beneath her skin. If I am bound to this place, she continued, her voice steadier than before, then why does it feel like something is pulling me away from it? That made him pause. It was subtle, a slight shift in his posture, a narrowing of his gaze. But Ava saw it. The first sign that something she said had not been expected. Explain, he said. Ava swallowed, her eyes drifting briefly toward the open doorway before returning to him. Why try to leave? She said. It did not just stop me. It felt like something was pulling in two directions. She hesitated, searching for the right words. Like this place was holding me, but something else was trying to take me. The silence that followed was different this time. Not controlled, not deliberate, tense. His gaze darkened slightly, not with anger, but with something sharper. Awareness. Say that again, he said. Ava blinked, thrown off by the sudden intensity in his voice. I said it felt like something else was pulling me, she repeated, more cautiously now. His attention sharpened further, his focus narrowing entirely onto her. Not the barrier, he clarified. The pull. Ava nodded slowly. Yes. He took a step back, just enough to create space, his gaze shifting slightly as if he were looking beyond the chamber, beyond the walls, towards something distant. Something unseen. Ava felt it then. The air changed again. Not colder, not heavier. Different, subtle, but unmistakable. The same faint sensation she had felt when she tried to leave. A pull. It brushed against her senses like a whisper she could not hear, but somehow understood. Her breath caught. You feel it, she said, her voice dropping. He did not answer immediately, but the tension in his posture was enough. Ava turned her head slightly, her attention drawn toward the open doorway again, toward the darkness beyond it. The pull was faint, but it was there, calling, not loudly, not urgently, just present, waiting. What is that? She whispered. This time, when he answered, his voice had changed, not softer, more dangerous. That, he said, is what comes with the mark. Ava felt her pulse spike again. You mean the claim? She said. Yes. Ava shook her head slightly, trying to understand. But you said it was a signal, she said. You said it would draw things toward me. He turned his gaze back to her, his expression unreadable. It does, he said. Ava frowned, confusion tightening her chest. Then why does it feel like it's pulling me towards something? She asked. The question hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he stepped closer again, his presence grounding and overwhelming all at once. Because it is not just a signal, he said. Ava breath caught. It is a connection. The word sent a chill through her entire body. Connection implied something far more dangerous than attention. It implied direction. Purpose. To what? She asked, her voice barely holding steady. His gaze held hers, unblinking. To whoever made the claim. The answer landed like a final piece falling into place. Ava felt her stomach drop as the truth settled in. This was not random. This was not just something that had happened to her. It was something that had been set in motion long before she ever stepped into that coffin, and now was pulling her towards something she could not see, could not understand. Her fingers tightened again, her breath growing shallow as the faint pull brushed against her senses once more. Stronger this time, not enough to move her, but enough to remind her it was there, waiting. Then it is not over, she said quietly. It is just starting. He did not deny it. Ava looked up at him, fear and something else flickering in her eyes now. Determination. Then, I need to know what I am, she said. The words came stronger this time. More certain, because if something out there is calling me, I am not going to stand here and wait for it to decide what happens next. For a moment, The chamber held its breath again. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. Not approval. Not surprise. Recognition. Good, he said quietly. Ava blinked, caught off guard by the response. Good, he repeated, his voice steady, controlled. Because whatever claimed you, he continued, will not wait much longer. The faint pull intensified again, just enough to make Ava breath itch. And this time, she knew. It was not just reaching for her. It was getting closer. The pull did not fade this time. It lingered, steady and undeniable, threading through Ava's chest like an invisible line that tightened with each passing second. She could feel it now, without trying, a quiet force beneath her skin, guiding her attention towards something beyond the chamber walls. Not a direction she could see, a direction she could feel. Her breathing slowed, not because she was calm, but because something inside her was beginning to adjust. To listen. It is closer, she said quietly, her eyes unfocused as she tried to understand the sensation. He did not respond immediately, but she could feel his attention sharpen, his awareness expanding outward beyond what she could perceive. Yes, he said after a moment. Ava swallowed, her fingers pressing lightly against her palm again. Then it is not just calling me, she said. It is coming for me. The statement felt real the moment she spoke it. Not fear, not speculation. Truth. He stepped closer, his presence steady, grounding the space around her as the unseen pull continued to tighten. It is not just coming for you, he said. Ava looked up at him, her heart tightening. Then what is it doing? His gaze held hers, dark and focused. It is coming to claim what it marked. The words settled deep, heavier than before. Ava felt them echo through her, matching the pull she could now clearly feel. Not random, not wandering, directed, intentional. Then why do I feel like it is not hostile? She asked suddenly. The question surprised even her. He paused again, this time longer. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying her in a way that made her feel exposed again, but not in the same way as before. This was different. This was calculation. Explain, he said. Ava hesitated, searching for the right words. When the hunters were here, she said slowly, I felt fear. Real fear. Like something was wrong. Like I needed to get away. She placed a hand lightly against her chest, her voice dropping. But this does not feel like that. The admission hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. It feels, she stopped, struggling to define it. Familiar. The word barely left her lips, but it changed everything. He went still, not in the controlled stillness she had seen before. This was sharper, more focused. Ava saw it in the way his posture shifted slightly, in the way the air around him seemed to tighten. Familiar, he repeated. Ava nodded slowly, her eyes flickering again toward the unseen direction of the pull. I do not understand it, she said quickly. I know how that sounds, but it does not feel like something that wants to hurt me. Silence followed. Not calm, not empty, heavy with implication. He stepped even closer now, his presence overwhelming again but not suffocating. Grounding, anchoring her in place as the pull continued to strengthen. That is what makes it dangerous, he said quietly. Ava breath caught. Why, she asked. His gaze did not waver. Because the most dangerous things do not feel like threats, he replied. The truth in his words settled deep, cutting through the fragile sense of understanding she had just begun to form. Ava looked down at her hand again, at the place where the glow had appeared. Then what if it is not an enemy, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What if it is something else? The question hung between them, dangerous in a different way. Not fear. Possibility. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached out once more, his hand closing gently around her wrist, grounding her before she could drift further into the pull. Then it is something you still cannot trust, he said. Ava felt the firmness in his grip, not painful, but unyielding. A reminder. She looked up at him again, her expression shifting. Not just fear now. Conflict. You do not trust it, she said. It was not a question. He did not deny it. No. Ava took a slow breath, her thoughts racing. But you do not understand it either, she pressed. His silence answered her. Ava felt a strange sense of clarity settle in her chest, cutting through the confusion. For the first time since this had begun, she realized something important. He was not in control of this. Not completely. That realization changed everything. Then this is not just your fight, she said quietly. His grip tightened slightly. It is my domain, he replied. Ava shook her head, her voice gaining strength. But it is my mark, she said. The words came out stronger than she expected. More certain. The pulse surged again, stronger this time, enough to make her breath hitch sharply as her body reacted. It was closer, much closer. Ava's eyes snapped toward the doorway, her senses sharpening instinctively. It is here, she whispered. The air in the chamber shifted instantly, the tension returning, heavier than before. Not from movement, from presence. Ava felt it before she saw anything. The pull was no longer distant. It was right at the edge of the domain, waiting. And for the first time, she realized something that made her heart race in a completely different way. Whatever was coming was not just searching for her. It knew exactly where she was. The moment Ava whispered it is here, the chamber responded before anything else did. The air tightened, the faint flames along the walls dimming, as if something outside was pulling even the light toward it. Ava felt it surge through her body, the connection no longer a distant thread but a direct line, pulling, calling, demanding. Her breath caught sharply as her hand lifted on its own, fingers trembling as that same glow erupted beneath her skin again, brighter than before, no longer flickering but steady, alive. It knows, she said, her voice barely holding together. It knows I am here. He did not answer. He did not need to. His attention had already shifted fully toward the entrance, his entire presence sharpening in a way Ava had not seen before. This was not control. This was readiness. The kind that came before something unavoidable. The doorway darkened. Not from shadow. From presence. Ava felt it before she saw anything. The pull intensifying until it became almost unbearable, forcing her to take a step forward despite herself. His hand tightened instantly around her wrist, stopping her. Do not move, he said, his voice lower now, more dangerous than ever. Ava nodded quickly, though her body still leaned forward slightly, drawn by something she could not fight. Then stepped into view, not with sound, not with force. It simply appeared, as if it had always been there and the world had just caught up to it. A figure, tall and still, cloaked in darkness that did not behave like shadow, but like something alive, shifting subtly with every movement. Ava's breath left her in a sharp exhale as the connection snapped into clarity. This was it. This was what had marked her. The figure stopped just inside the threshold, its presence filling the chamber without effort. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then Ava heard it. Not aloud, not through her ears. Inside her mind, a voice. Soft, calm, familiar in a way that made her chest tighten. You came. Ava flinched, her free hand rising to her head as the words echoed through her thoughts. I did not, she whispered. I did not choose this. The presence shifted slightly, the darkness around it pulling tighter. You did not need to. The answer came just as clearly, just as calm. Ava shook her head, panic and understanding colliding. What are you? She asked, her voice trembling. This time, the silence stretched longer before the answer came. Not a name, not a title, a truth, the one who bound you. The words hit harder than anything else. Ava felt her knees weaken slightly, her body struggling to hold steady under the weight of it. She turned her head slowly toward him, the one who had kept her alive, who stood beside her now, unyielding. His gaze had not left the figure. Not once. You knew, she said quietly. He did not deny it. I suspected, he replied. Ava swallowed hard, her attention pulled back to the figure as the connection between them pulsed again, stronger than ever. Why me, she asked. The question came out broken, but real. This time, the answer did not come immediately. When it did, it was softer, almost human, because you were the last. Ava's breath caught. The last what? She whispered. The darkness shifted again, revealing just enough of a face to make her heart stop. Pale, still, ancient, not cruel, not kind, certain. The last bloodline that can end what I began. The truth crashed through her, shattering everything she thought she understood. Ava stepped back instinctively, her mind reeling. "And," she repeated, "you are saying I am supposed to destroy you." The faintest trace of something appeared in the figure expression. Not fear, not regret, acceptance, or free me. The words changed everything. Ava stared, her thoughts spinning. "That is not the same thing," she said. "It is," the voice answered calmly. He moved then, stepping slightly in front of her, placing himself between her and the figure without hesitation. "You will not take her," he said, his voice cold, absolute. The presence did not react. Not with anger. Not with resistance. It simply remained. "I am not here to take her." Ava felt the connection pulse again, but this time it was different. Not pulling. Waiting. She looked between them, understanding slowly forming through the chaos. "It is not trying to take me," she said. "It is waiting for me to choose." The realization settled heavily, but it brought something else with it. Clarity. For the first time since this began, she understood her place in it. Not a victim. Not a prize. A decision. She stepped forward before she could lose her nerve. His grip tightened for a fraction of a second, then loosened as he watched her. Ava took another step, her eyes fixed on the figure. "If I choose to end this," she said, her voice steady despite the fear, "then everything stops." "Yes. And if I choose not to," she asked, "then it continues." The simplicity of it cut deeper than anything else. Ava closed her eyes for a brief moment, her breath steadying as she made the only decision she had ever truly been given. When she opened them again, the fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She stepped fully into the space between them, her glowing hand lifting as the light returned, brighter than ever before. "Then I choose to end it," she said. The chamber fell silent. The light surged, spreading from her hand, reaching toward the figure as the connection between them flared to life one final time. The darkness did not fight it. It did not resist. It accepted it. And then, slowly it began to fade. Not violently, not painfully, like something finally released. Ava felt the pull vanish as the light dimmed, the connection dissolving into nothing. When it was over, the chamber was quiet again. Truly quiet this time. Ava lowered her hand, her breath steady, her body still. The mark was gone. Completely. She looked down at her palm, then back up. The space where the figure had stood was empty. The pull was gone. The war was over before it could begin. She turned slowly toward him, the one who had stood beside her through all. His gaze met hers, steady as ever, but different now. Not ownership, not control, recognition. Ava let out a slow breath. "So that is it," she said quietly. "It is over." He studied her for a moment, then nodded once. "Yes." The single word carried something rare. Finality. Ava looked around the chamber, at the stillness, at the absence of everything that had threatened to consume her life. And she looked back at him. "Then I can leave," she said. This time, when she turned toward the doorway, nothing stopped her. No force, no vedir, no pull, just open space. She paused at the threshold, glancing back one last time. He had not moved, still standing where she had left him, watching, not stopping her, not claiming her. Ava gave a small, quiet nod, then stepped forward. And this time, she walked out without resistance, without fear, because for the first time since she had run into the darkness, she was finally free.